And we are live for another edition of FTMIG Live on the Midas Letter Network.
Nice.
Carl's here. Greg's here.
Welcome.
Gentlemen,
And
how's it
your
going?
bird shirt's here.
And the bird shirt's here. You know, Johnny Mac's coming on later, and he's going to appreciate this bird shirt.
And your bird shirt.
I wore this for you, Johnny Mac. We're coming on shortly past 2 o'clock. He'll be coming on to break down TGIF, GGI, Namaste. Those are the 3 winners of our poll that's been going this week that all of our members can do. So if you're listening to this now on our Facebook group, Follow the Money Investor group, you can vote for that for next week to see what he breaks down. And we have 3 guests coming on. We had Nathan Woodworth, CEO of James E. Wagner, Aurelio Usechi, please forgive me if I said your last name wrong there, Relevium, and Daniel Perlstein, Canopy Rivers. So we'll have those the 3 of them coming on.
Good show going on.
Yeah.
I've met Daniel before.
He's passionate.
He's
That guy's
cool,
passionate.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
moved up, right? He was with 8 Capital before, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, we got
you
to
do.
talk to him
And
after a
he's
little bit.
He's a part of Canopy Rivers now, right?
Yep. So, Greg, what's exciting you, or the exact opposite in the market right now?
Oh my God, it's just so red out there right now. But I don't think anything's worse than a free.
That's why don't we break it down? That has obviously retraced significantly since I think you and I were talking on the show about a free at $20 in October.
Remember when that whole like Atria or
Altria, yeah.
Altria, that whole thing when it happened on this show live, and we saw it go to $22, and it was up 20 cents or 20%. Like, and now look at it, it's at $5.
Actually just hit 5 when you said 5.
$5.
Hit $5. That's cheaper than when I 2 years ago I was
told me to get
telling
in.
you
I got in
about
at like
cannabis stocks.
$7 or
Yeah,
something.
and it's retraced
lower
all the
than that.
way back. And you know, we've been talking about in our different groups about the short report, and you know, there's a lot of different sides to look at this, but there's from the peers to be merit to what this is. While at the same time, you also have to understand they do have Canadian operations. You know, not everything was out in Latin America, but I think that's almost beside the point.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff. I know, Karl, you were looking into that a lot recently as well. As I get the smile from Karl, what did you think of everything?
No, you know what? I actually think you deserve some credit here because you never liked, you weren't really a fan of Afria after that Nuvara deal. And you made that, you know, you mentioned it right after you knew that the insiders owned some of that company.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now you just see apparently, allegedly, more of the same. So you know, that's a good eye on you.
Yeah, it was. And for those who don't know what that is, it's the Nuvera deal bought for $450 million. What rubbed me the wrong way when I was looking at that was that they did that supply deal with Nuvera. I think it was for 150 or 250 kilograms of cannabis. It ran about 30%, and then they bought them out.
Yeah.
All the while knowing that there were, you know, insiders on both sides.
Wasn't the actual price higher than that though? I
Yeah,
thought
it was
close
cut.
to
It was
$1 billion.
I think it was cut back to 450 million after a lot of things came out and a lot of hearsay and all
yeah.
that. So I think you're right. I think it was much higher, and then it went to 450 million afterwards.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, it's times like this when you don't want to say too much, right? It's just like the Bridgemark stuff. It's like there's just like you gotta be careful what you say. So,
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing too, is that this is an ongoing investigation.
Yeah.
So for people to start saying free is a scam, that's not right. Like I'm very confident that their Canadian operation, all that, is not a scam. They do have a lot of good things going for them, but to start taking too many, we have to wait for them to respond. There's going to be stuff going back and forth.
Yeah.
But the scary part for current investors, I think you're about to say it, tomorrow.
Well, there's the Hindenburg. Who's the other team behind it? Is it Quintessential or Quint?
Yes,
something?
yes. Quint's Capital, Quintessential.
Yeah, so they announced that they're going to have another report coming out on Thursday. We know the U.S. markets are closed today, or the big boards anyway. So, yeah, a little bit of unknown. I actually thought maybe that strategically they maybe would have covered today, but how would they do that? So, yeah. I thought, well, that's a stupid one, Karl. But yeah, no, there's some unknown stuff there. But listen, I watched the video. It's pretty
pretty damaging.
It's pretty bad,
Yeah.
you know, like so. And then, you know, Afria
But there was a report that came out after
from Afria?
from somebody from them, I believe, that kind of like contradicted a few of their things. It was a long article, but it was It covered a few things, but that
Yeah.
video.
Well, you know what? That's why I don't want to say I don't like bashing companies. You know, and unless you're going to go out there and do the work like these people did.
Oh, yeah.
I do have some friends in Jamaica, so can always see if they can go down.
Go
and
stop by.
And no, seriously, like you know, message them and say, hey, go check out.
And I know there was a post on from a worker from the Leamington facility saying that, you know, everything's good here and blah 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 blah. So
yeah, you got to watch out for these because there is an agenda, but I don't. You know, I've seen some Anson things come out in different areas, and who's the other one? Sounds like a lemon.
Citron.
Citron. I was blanking on her name. But
Sounds like
you know,
11.
I see some of their reports sometimes, and I'm like, I can see it a little bit, but there's a push there.
Oh yeah.
I really did find, just from you know, an investor and looking at something, I thought that it was a lot of good due diligence on their part. They actually went to locations and all that.
But when you're going to do that, you have to be factual.
Yeah.
Or
You have to be.
you're the one. You're the liability, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, hopefully, you know, we have people in our community that owned Afria. I don't know if they still do or not, but hopefully that they can back up the statements. And if not, then there's a big lesson here for a lot of people to learn.
Yeah, and
because you know what, Brandon, I'm really giving you credit here, and I don't give you a lot all the time.
just makes fun of my shirts all the time.
No,
He
but
wishes you
know
were
what?
wearing that shirt
As
when
an
he says
investor,
this.
you looked at that Nuvara deal and you were like, why would I invest in this company?
Yeah.
This doesn't make sense to me, right? And that's what you have to do. And what I saw in their rebuttal was more, you know, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but it did seem like they were sort of placing blame through some lawyers and stuff like that and saying, hey, we disclosed what we needed to. Well, you know, I mean, and that would be the issue here, is if there's an arm's length transaction, things have to be disclosed. Investors have to understand that insiders of Afria own those companies, right? And then you would go through things and try to put a value on it. You would just look at it a little bit more with a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah.
So if they did,
yeah.
or they did not, that is the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and someone here on the exact line, Karl, someone was asking here, trying to find out where it was. They were asking on our YouTube right now, you know, do you think other people are doing this? And to be honest, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a terrible thing to say because I don't want to try to like ruin people's sentiment on the market, but you have to understand that this is such a new industry where there's a lot of people who came in and saw, you know, dollar signs start going on their eyes. And this isn't, I'm not talking about free here. I'm not going to go that far, you know, let that play out, and other people much smarter than I will figure out if things were done poorly or not. But I do believe there are companies, look at this stuff with Bridgemark that's happened recently, and we're looking at a lot of these different elements. I think this is going to affect other companies. I think as an investor, you know, all the more reason to get into groups, to get into chat rooms, to talk to people that aren't on Stockhouse. Forgive me, but like a lot of the times they have a huge agenda there, so just be careful. But talk with people, figure out what's going on, bounce ideas off of one another, because a lot of these you can catch if you see that they've done similar things before. So, you know, not to scare people off, I'm still investing in cannabis. I just do a lot of due diligence into the companies I choose.
Yeah, but and that's probably something that we need to do, is keep showing people how to do due diligence and also learn. I'm definitely not the best at it. You know, I'm still trying to learn, right?
Yeah.
That's really the only thing you can do to catch these type of people that are using public vehicles to not even just set up their family, but their kids' families.
Yeah.
Well,
because some of the money getting tossed around here is like
it's incredible.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
But speaking of families, we had Nathan Woodworth on here before. What I didn't realize, and what you'll find out in this clip in just a second, is that his father and his father's father all used to grow cannabis. It's been handed down over the years. We had a really good talk about James E. Wagner and everything they're doing over there with Aeroponics. So why don't we go over there now and see what Nathan had to say. And we're joined here today with Nathan Woodworth, CEO of James E. Wagner. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Thanks very much for having me on.
Absolutely, and I appreciate your time. So for all of our visitors or viewers who may not be familiar with you, who are you and what have you been doing over the last few years?
Well, my name is Nathan Woodworth. I'm the CEO of James E. Wagner Cultivation, as you mentioned. I've been a cannabis grower since fairly early on in the MMAR process. I began growing cannabis first for myself, and then we grew into a moderately sized collective of patients and growers under that program. We performed a lot of research back in the MMAR days that led to the development of a brand new proprietary aeroponic production platform. When they announced the MMPR, we decided that it was a good time for us to make the changeover. We had the right people, the right tech, the right solutions to bring our terrific cannabis to the general commercial market for medical cannabis users here in Canada. And of course, we're excited to be scaling toward being able to approach the recreational market as well.
Well, glad to hear. And, I was looking into you guys a little bit earlier, or I have been for some time, but more so this morning before our interview. And it was very interesting to see your background where it's right in your bio. You had chronic migraines and you're trying to find different ways of solving that. And you ended up finding that medical cannabis was the key to that. And then built that over the years. I believe it's been since about 2013 or 14, so it's not like you just started last year, correct?
Well, I was growing under the MMAR in 2006, 2007 was when I got started there.
Even earlier.
And we operated for some time as a collective of patients and growers. We had, over a dozen growers working for us and dozens of patients in the region. And it was in that arena that we began doing research. So we were incorporated in 2013, but that was in response to a need to, have a certain structure as a business so that we could approach the MMPR and the application process. We were in existence for a long time before that. And that's why we named the company after my grandfather. He was a farmer all his life, and he grew cannabis as well. And his father grew cannabis before him. In fact, my great-grandfather was growing cannabis before Prohibition. So we decided when we incorporated and we took on this new, more business-like structure that we should preserve our heritage. And so we named our business after my grandfather.
It's a very interesting story, actually. And it's a long lineage of growing, it seems like. But you mentioned the word structure and the structure of your business. Now, you are an LP, but you're also a technology company as well. Can you explain how you go into technology and how that's an aspect of your company as well?
It's an aspect of every licensed producer's business. Technology is inherently a part of all modern cannabis production. We can't produce high-quality, consistent medicine using the same traditional methods that my grandfather used. Instead, we turn to high-tech solutions. We need to understand the total process from a very scientific footing. We need to be able to control everything about the cannabis plant's life cycle in order to produce a top-quality finished product. And that's what really led us to identify as a technology company. Even before the MMPR, we had developed a series of unique technological solutions to address exactly that problem. My brother joined our collective very early on, and he's a PhD candidate in plant biology, and he got us set up on a research footing. And we began looking at all of the different ways that cannabis can be grown, the good and the bad, in order to understand all of the variables in that process. And that led us to the aeroponic technology that we use today. And today we call it the Growth Storm Production Platform. And it's made up of a variety of very high-tech solutions. We use, of course, the main aeroponic enclosure, one of the only aeroponic systems in the world specifically engineered for cannabis. But we have solutions which address the issues of trimming and drying. We have our unique cloning technology. So the Growth Storm platform really addresses the total job of producing cannabis from beginning to end.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask about that actually, because that's something that I'm not too familiar with myself. I've been trying to learn over the last several months as I learned different techniques of growing and which LPs have different advantages in what different ways. But I find a lot of people are not familiar with aeroponics. You briefly just explained why you went into that, but what's the big difference between aeroponics and, say, hydroponics, or going just straight up into soil?
So you really describe those techniques on a gradient. Traditional soil culture, generally very traditional soil culture, doesn't use any sort of dissolved nutrients. Once we begin dissolving the nutrients in water, we've really switched into what we call hydroponics, and that's really where the name comes from. The nutrients are delivered in the water, which is delivered to the plant. And so all of those techniques, including the soilless soil type substrates that many producers use today, are technically hydroponics. We really, though, refer to a set of more advanced substrate techniques by the term hydroponics, and there we can use a variety of materials from rock wool, vermiculite, hydrogen pebbles, those sorts of things in order to encase the root mass. But hiding that root mass, putting it out of sight, offers a series of disadvantages, and it was those disadvantages that we set out to address. In aeroponics, the roots of the plant hang freely inside an enclosure, and they are misted with a very special proprietary nutrient solution. By removing any intermediate material between us and the plant, we drastically reduce the number of variables involved in the process. We're now able to deal directly with the organism itself. As a result, we could measure the total dissolved solids in one of our reservoir and the water level in that reservoir and repeat that process 15 minutes later and tell you to the microgram how much nutrition that plant has consumed. For the first time ever, that is an active measure of metabolic activity in a plant. We are watching the plant eat. This allows us an order of magnitude better data resolution. We now have access to more data on a more regular basis than has ever been achieved before. This in turn allows us to optimize our system to a much greater degree than has ever been achieved. As a result, we're able to drive higher yields per square foot, we're able to push through more iterations, more crops per year, and we're able to produce a cleaner, more consistent medicine. And all of that, of course, fails to mention the idea that by not bringing in any substrate material into our grow rooms, we're able to produce a product which is as clean as is possible as it leaves that room. Of course, Canada, we are required to do a biological analysis of the finished product before we offer it for sale. There's an acceptable range of biological contamination. Above a certain range, growers are required to irradiate their product. And of course, this is a process which is widely used throughout the industry. After irradiation, those materials test as zero biological contaminants. Most of our crops come out of our grow rooms with zero biological contaminants without any additional bioremediation. And this is because of the intense degree of control that we put into our process.
And that's interesting because a lot of people are concerned about that when they hear that their cannabis has been aerated, if I'm saying that correctly, and they don't like that. So you're skipping that, and I think this process of what you're doing, your aeroponics, it all ties into something you just recently filed a patent for, the GrowStorm dual droplet system. What is that, and why is that important to this, to everything that you're doing?
I'm really, happy to get a chance to finally talk about the dual droplet system because we've been working on it now for a few months. I first conceived of this advance in considering a problem that has existed in aeroponics from the beginning. And I should be clear, aeroponics has always been an incomplete, unfinished technology. We believe for the first time ever we've addressed some of those final level problems. We've advanced to the next generation of aeroponic technology, and we now have a system which is considerably more comprehensive than any of the existing aeroponic technology that's out there. The basic problem is, and I'm going to try not to get too technical here because I do love the science of the plant, but in the end, the roots of the plant grow most naturally when exposed to a very small droplet size. The original research into aeroponics found that the roots mimicked their growth pattern in a substrate material most accurately when we use a droplet size of less than 50 microns. The problem is that an aggressive growing plant like cannabis simply can't get all of the nutrients it needs at that droplet size. So we began by experimenting with a wide variety of droplet sizes, and we found that our best growth rates, our best product, our most controlled processes actually occurred at 180 microns, which is considerably higher than would normally be considered correct by the academic aeroponic community. However, it did offer the best results. But there were issues. We still didn't see that exact mimicry of the normal natural root growth pattern. So we always knew that there was more to be done, that there was additional work to be done. The dual droplet system now offers two different nutrient solutions which are delivered in two different droplet sizes. We use a very small droplet size, below 20 microns, to deliver a very narrow selection of nutrients, and then we use a larger droplet size at approximately 180 microns to deliver a wider range of nutrients. This has unlocked a new level of growth within the plants. Overall plant metrics across the board are seeing massive jumps. We're not going to be rolling out a formal report on this until the new year. We want to get a little bit more data, a couple more runs under our belt, just to make sure that these numbers that we're seeing are real. But if real, we've taken one of the most advanced systems in the world and we've advanced it again in a very material and significant way. The original growth storm system is capable of producing in excess of 350 grams per square foot of canopy a year. We're seeing significantly more than that with the dual droplet system. And we hope to be able to push to some of the highest yields ever recorded using this technology. In our grow rooms, we talk a lot about an old agricultural philosophical principle called Liebig's Law of Limits. Liebig was, in the 1800s, a natural philosopher who stated that a plant will grow to the maximum extent of the minimally available element. So there's always something in the system that limits it. And in aeroponics, we attack limits. We're always trying to remove the next limit and move to the next level of growth. And with the results we're seeing from the GrowStorm dual droplet system, we believe we may be approaching the genetic limit, the limit of what the genome of the cannabis plant is truly capable of for the first time ever.
Yeah, well, that's an answer. You went into that in depth, and I appreciate that. And actually, I was going to ask you what type of yields you are able to get from that, but it sounds like this is a question I'm going to ask again in the new year. We'll have you back on because you want to make sure those numbers are correct. Like you were saying, you want to do a formal report in the new year.
And I'd be happy to come back and discuss that report. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting information here. You know, one of the things we say about the growth storm system, and in particular the growth storm dual droplet system, is that this is a process engineered for cannabis. But interestingly, it's applicable to any long growth cycle crop. Aeroponics has traditionally been very difficult to adapt to crops that take more than 40 or 50 days to grow. And we've addressed some of those problems with the original growth storm system, and now we believe that we have conquered all of the remaining issues with the dual droplet system. So much so that I'm going to be beginning a non-cannabis related experiment with the dual droplet system, and my kids are going to help me with this actually. We're going to try and grow an apple tree. And in a few years' time, if this experiment is successful, we will have grown the first multi-year plant, the first apples in history that have never known soil, which is very exciting. And I think that it has applications not only within the cannabis area, but also in agriculture in general. You know, these technologies are important. They are something that we're going to be turning to in the decades to come as a way to produce a lot of the crops that we're using traditional methods to produce today.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting actually, and I guess that's where the technology side of your company comes in, because it's helping you grow cannabis, but at the same time, I can imagine you can then use that technology and patent in other areas, and whether you white label it or whether you just go into other areas. That'd be really interesting. Now, we're getting close for time, but I did want to ask two questions that came from our investors. We always go to them at our Facebook group and just make sure that we get as many questions as we can from our investors to their CEOs and the companies they're interested in. And there's two questions. We'll start with the first. How's everything going at your new facility? I believe you had a news release recently as well on that, talking about the progress.
Progress is fantastic. You know, it's the most advanced facility we can conceive of, and we believe it to be one of the most advanced designs for these types of facilities in the world. It's very exciting to see the last pieces of the puzzle coming together, and we are hoping to be moving into that space very soon. And we'll begin with 8 of our flowering rooms, increasing our total production ability by 130% at one fell swoop. And then we have a very smooth path to scale. We've designed this facility so that we can can add 8 additional of our grow rooms every month, and we're going to continue to hit that deadline as we move forward. Everything is on track and looking beautiful, and we hope to have some images to share of the completed facility very soon.
Good, glad to hear. And then the last question before we let you go, I'm sure you hear this all the time and everyone's asking all their cannabis companies this. Do you have any plans for going onto an American exchange, on the Frankfurt, uplisting? Where do you stand on the stock market side of things?
Yeah, we're definitely looking at other exchanges. We're going to be moving into new areas. There's a lot of plans in that regard, and obviously the U.S. is an important marketplace right now. I think a lot of investors are looking at cannabis because of the potential imminent situation down that way. So that's our first stop, and then we are going to look into other areas. When you look at the patents that we filed, it's important to note that we filed them for Canada, and at the same time we filed them in the US and in Europe. And I think that those are the markets that we have our eye on, and those are the areas where we're going to be looking to expand very shortly.
Well, hey, I appreciate answering some investor questions, coming on this show, taking your time to educate us a little bit more about what you're doing. You can find yourself on, I believe, the TSX Venture, JWCA, I believe, is the ticker. And it's been a pleasure having you on. We look forward to the new year, because I'm actually very curious about those numbers when you are ready to have that report and come back on and tell us a little bit more about it.
Absolutely, I look forward to it, and thanks very much for having me on today.
Absolutely. That was it was interesting. I think that was probably the most educated CEO I've talked to in the sense of the actual plant in itself.
He knew everything about it.
He went off, and I like that.
Yeah, I've heard so many good things about Aeroponics, and to actually dive in that much was really kind of neat to see.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've been talking about for how long, Karl? When you're looking at these different companies, there has to be something that differentiates someone.
Yeah.
There has to be either they're going to be amazing growers, or they're going to be amazing they're oil extractors, or they're going to go into this. They're going to go. Don't just go into these people who have all these different plans. You don't really know what's going on. You want someone at the end to not have crops fail. You want good crops.
Who else is doing Aeroponics? Do you even I
actually don't know.
I couldn't think of anybody else right now.
I've only ever heard of one Aeroponics I can think of, and one Aquaponics. What was that?
Oh my God, I can't remember.
What was that company? It's a private LP.
No, I don't remember.
But I remember looking at them like, Aquaponics? What's Aquaponics? And that was interesting. I think they're privately held.
Oh, yeah.
I think they're privately held. So some of our YouTubers on the Midas Network were asking some questions about how is Aphria doing. Actually, 5 or 6 people in a row have just put their ticker over and over. Not too well, but neither is the entire industry. It's bad. Usually we have a little bit of reprieve when the Americans are on break. Not today. What's going on, Greg?
I wish I knew, man. I wish I knew.
But
Sales,
no kidding. But you brought up a point about the Americans, though, the American companies.
Yeah, I was just looking at MPX. MPX is at 73. It was down to 69 today. Right?
Yep.
So these are, companies.
and his counterpart Ianthus was down huge today too.
Mm-hmm.
It might be good to start looking into there.
Those are merging. I almost forgot that.
So what's going on with GGB?
GGB, Green Growth Brands, they're down 3%. They're at 263.
I kind of thought they were getting hit because they have a little exposure to Aphria.
Yeah, but I think that's just financial. I think that's just an investment.
It's a little ambiguous, though.
Yeah.
We don't really know. But I think the market knows that. But then I looked at the other American plays. I'm like, okay, they're down. So maybe it's just not a connection to Aphria. So
GGB is down 2.59%. The only person who's faring better that I'm looking at right now, nope, they just jumped to 2.67.
What's Kronos?
Everyone else is that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Actually, Planet Health is better, but they just dropped like 30%. Kronos, do I have that in my Canadian one for some reason?
Tell us, Brandon.
I will tell you. My deep voice. Kronos, where are you? Kron is down 10.75%. So a lot of these,
wow.
You have to be wondering though, we've been seeing corrections for a long time. There's got to be people with money out there. Maybe not today. If you look at the markets, you're probably thinking, I'm going to wait a second. But When do these start getting attractive? When you look at this and like, wow, these are 52-week lows. They're becoming more realistic with.
But they're not all, but like for example, that breaking the $40 barrier for Canopy, that's
down 11%.
Yeah, it's not good. There's a gap there, I think, from somewhere in 34 to 38, so it's filling that gap. But the sector usually looks at that, right? So that's not good. No. But also, you saw what happened with the Dow and the S&P yesterday.
Oh my goodness!
So you had this, good expectation leading into the week, and then, you know what I mean? So there's, we could be headed here for a recession in the next 6 months to a year, and things are kind of up in the air, and it's not good.
Yeah. Well, there was a couple of things. I remember there were some tweets went out from Trump. Who would have thought? Some tweets went out with Trump, and he was talking about on Chinese media. They never mentioned what American media was covering with the trade halt that they were talking about and cutting back on tariffs. So there's a little bit of who knows what's going on there. That investigation into his lawyer's office and stuff is starting to heat up. And I'm not trying to bring in politics. I'm just trying to bring in insecurity for the markets. And then you have that, and the Farm Bill still hasn't gone through. So you've got these elements that are coming in right now, and the FRIA thing definitely did not help because people are now questioning, are all of these companies, what are the assets really worth?
We got to talk about other stuff, man. Not just cannabis.
Yeah.
There's technology, man. There's a lot of cool stuff.
What technology stock are you watching?
I'm not watching any of them. I'm just suggesting we need to start.
Call them out on live. I'm sorry.
Oh, criticizing
Apple.
Yeah, but I'd like to learn about some of these companies, and this is a great platform to learn. To bring them on here, and I'll just be like, what does that mean?
Honestly, and I find we obviously talk about commodities and cannabis the most because that's what we know. But I do want to start looking into technology, AI, all that fascinates me. Really quickly though, Travis, 1933 Industries. That's going to be broken down by Johnny Mac just after 2 p.m. Eastern. So stay tuned. They were one of the ones who won our poll, so their TA will be broken down.
Down.
Hey, into the ground.
Stop it. Oh, no.
Oh, we're getting old there. Well, speaking of cannabis, we're going back to it, but that's actually, I set that up wrong because you did the before going to a really...
Man. We got to trailblaze.
This one is biosciences. So going into your endocannabinoid system and the different elements of what make us, like our body, and how cannabinoids can fight different things, how cannabinoids can really make us healthier over time. So there's cannabis smoking and selling and recreation we keep talking about, but there's also the medical side of things that could be massive. So now we're going into pharmacy, Karl. What in pharmacy? But a couple of different things here. We're going to Aurelio from Relevium, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his company right now. And we're here with Aurelio Usechi.
Usechi.
Oh, Usechi. I was practicing it for a few times there. It's a unique name. I love the name.
Thank you.
CEO of Relevium Technologies. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely, and I heard you came all the way from Montreal, so I appreciate your time.
Yes, absolutely. Why not? It's you guys have a very good following, and I'm very excited to be here with you today.
Absolutely. So when it comes to your company and who you are, what you're doing, what you're excited about, for those who haven't heard of you or have been following it, who is Relevium?
So Relevium has two core businesses. One business is the over-the-counter online retailing of nutraceutical products. We acquired our first brand last year, summertime. And the mission of Relevium really is to become an acquisitive vehicle to add more brands to the portfolio in the United States, in Canada, and Europe. And so we have one brand. We've created sub-brands along the way to grow organically. And now we're starting to look at our next acquisition vehicle in the new year.
Very nice.
So that's on the OTC. This year we also started Biocannabis Pharma. So basically it's a biopharma play in cannabis that is focused on pediatric and geriatric applications.
Yeah, and somebody was actually, that's one of our questions from our investors actually, was specifically on that. Where are you in that process with them? And are they licensed already? Are you starting to sell with them, or is that still in the beginning stages?
So it's a startup, it's in the beginning stages. We've almost got the point of completing our application to Health Canada. But because it's a biopharma play, Our intention is not to grow to sell flower. Our intention is to have a small grow, to do research, genetic level, molecule level research, process and turn into medicine. We feel that we have enough leeway in terms of the waiting time to get licensed in the Canadian marketplace. We have other opportunities. We have an opportunity to acquire a license or partner with a license. So that's some of the things that we're looking at. But that's where we are in the process. We're in the process of designing the facility, doing some preliminary construction just to prepare the facility that we have in Montreal.
Yep.
And we have our partners in place. So we have a partner from the United States, Holistic Industries, and we also have licensed IP from another company in the United States called Canakids, and that IP will form part of the basics to start the pediatric part of the business.
Very nice, very nice. And you said actually that business is in Montreal, so you're looking to be in Montreal there.
In Montreal.
It's interesting, when you look at LPs and you look at people in the cannabis space, it's truly amazing how few are in Montreal. I was very surprised by that.
Even in Quebec as a whole, it's, there's not too many licensed producers. And we're seeing, we're still seeing a lot of people applying to get licenses. And I've attended a lot of presentations, corporate presentations of people that are licensed. And they all have the same, thinking, which is primarily they want to grow. So they were looking to have large footprints with a lot of production and so on and so forth. So we have a little different approach. We want to focus on controlling the genetics and the actual product itself at the end that is going to be given as medicine. So Montreal is it's a great place. Not a lot of competition.
And I can imagine slowly that'll start happening, but it truly is that exact word, slowly. So they got to catch up sooner or later. They're the second largest province and capita GDP in all of Canada, and they have so few. It's remarkable.
It is absolutely. The other thing that I thought is interesting to know is that there's so much that is not known about the benefits of cannabinoids in general. The endocannabinoid system, which is a system that we all have in our bodies of receptors to take cannabinoids, and the impact of the endocannabinoid system in terms of protecting you from getting sick. So individual targeting, out of all the cannabinoids, is it one that is beneficial? For example, is it really CBD, the holy grail, or is it a combination of THC and CBD? I think it's a combination of everything. We just need to do research and find out what is what for what purposes, and also individually on a patient level. How does that patient react? So the issues that you may have as a patient, or I may have as a patient, God forbid, is maybe we may be dealing with the same condition, but our bodies are different. So so that's where we're trying to gear biocannabis to focus on at that level of research. And we like the pediatric side of things. It's obviously we're all parents and we all have children, and I've been exposed to a lot of these kids who are sick. And for us, it's really also a passion project.
Yeah, and when it comes to your endocannabinoid system, it's amazing how many people don't fully understand that. There's been some research that's come out in the States where it speaks about even gut rot and colitis, how having a lot of CBD in your body, but just cannabinoids in general help, get rid of bad bacteria in your stomach and help promote just a healthier body. But even for hearing how I speak about it, we know so little. We just know about a little thing. Oh, it might be for this. It might be for pain inflammation. It might help you with headaches. And I say the word might. We've seen it does help a lot of different people. I think there's a lot more work to go. And it's like you said, each person will react to it differently. So we do need to put that time into finding out what cannabinoids are working for what people. Is it different from a male to a female? Is it different from someone who's older, from someone who's younger? Those are things that we still don't know, and it is very unique seeing people like yourself and other groups going into this, diving in and figuring out, okay, let's find the answers. And for Canada as a whole, I know Israel does a lot of research as well, but Canada has a really unique opportunity right now where we're allowed to research and all of these different things, where in the States they're really handcuffed at times.
Right.
Is that your reason for searching out Quebec, or more so just searching out Canada opposed to the United States with this type of arm?
Yes, and in fact, I think that is part of the reason also our partners like our story, because Canada allows them to take their IP and their existing know-how and basically offer it to the world through us. Our partners, for example, they have 8 grow locations in the United States. As you can, they can only sell regionally, state by state, and so on and so forth. So this opens up a different opportunity for them and for us. In terms of cannabinoid, I have to tell you, I agree with you. I think there's a story from the people that were licensing CannaKids, is the company in California. And there is a movie called Weed the People that is being shown across Canada. So we're going to be sponsoring the showing of this film across Canada. In that film, there's a story of about 8 children, and I'll give you one of them. One of them is a kid who was diagnosed with osteosarcoma, bone cancer. And when he comes into the film, he's got, the parents are told he's got 20 tumors in his chest, and it doesn't look good. They're telling him we need to give him pain medication to keep him comfortable and so on. So CannaKids, through their nursing and doctor stuff, they offer some formulations, and they started treating the child. And within a couple of weeks, he was taking off all the opioids for pain. His osteosarcoma is a very painful condition. And within a few months, all 20 tumors disappeared. So the doctors, who are puzzled, and obviously everybody's puzzled, what is it? So they said, he's doing radiation and chemotherapy. Those 2 by themselves did not cause this.
Yeah.
Was it cannabinoids that did it? Probably not directly. So the theory is that if you're able to balance your endocannabinoid system, then your body's able to fight and help, for example, take all the side effects of chemotherapy.
Yeah.
And so this child today is cancer-free. He remains on medication, on cannabis, and the team believes that he should be on cannabis for the rest of his life. That's another thing.
Yeah.
So is it a temporary thing, or is it for life situation? So the theory right now is that your endocannabinoid system needs to be balanced, and the only way, or the best way to do it, is through cannabinoids.
Yeah.
So it should be a lifetime dosing of, and to keep the person in good shape.
Yeah.
So the film has 8 wonderful stories. One of them a sad story, because in that one kid did not do well, but the other ones are like miracle cases. And so I think that's where the space is going to go to. The space has to go to more research. So yes, there is a recreational side. Yes, there's an over-the-counter. So we take CBD. So we're launching a CBD line, Leafy Life, in Europe. We don't have any medical claims, but we know CBD is very good for inflammation, for general health and wellness. But on the medical side, I think everything is going to go down to the molecule and try to target individual conditions for individual people. So.
Yeah, I'm very, very intrigued by that. That's one of the reasons why I started investing in cannabis 5 years ago. Because I started reading up about these, and I knew nothing about it. I started seeing you can build with cannabis, you can eat it and not get high. It's nutrition. There's so many different elements. So for one, it's very interesting that you guys are going into this. But for investors that are out there, a lot of people are looking at their portfolios, wondering who's going to be a winner, where can we go next. What can investors be excited about? I believe a lot of yours is in research. Are you guys revenue positive already, or are you guys going to be there in 2019?
So we are revenue positive. The Bioganics, which is the brand that we acquired last year, generates roughly about 4.2 to 4.5 million.
Okay.
We are expanding the brand. We're launching new products, new marketplaces. So the one thing that everyone can expect is some growth organically at our OTC, over-the-counter business. We can expect also that there will be 1 or 2 acquisitions in 2019 to add to the revenue base. And in terms of biocannabis, I think we can expect the company to be in a position where we've applied for the license, we're advanced, we're in construction. All of this, of course, will be subject to funding that we're planning to do in Q1.
Gotcha.
For biocannabis. So we're excited. There's some acquisition opportunities as well when it comes to biocannabis that we're looking at. And we announced today we have a team that joined us as an ex-director of operations from Amazon Inc. So a lot of our business is Amazon driven. And Amazon by itself is a bit of a mystery. It's not an easy market to there's many changes. The way that the algorithm, so the A9 algorithm that Amazon has went through many changes this year. So we felt that having someone that has inside know-how on Amazon would be the right person to come in and lead that business for us. So we made that announcement today.
Very nice.
So we have a lot to be excited about. And I hope that our shareholders feel the same way. It's a tough market, and I think we're going to see some corrections. As you know, there've been some, bad news as well in the market and so on and so forth. So we expect some corrections, but Relevium offers a bit of both. So Relevium offers to the shareholders a traditional health and wellness business that is incorporating cannabinoids, but it's not dependent on in the cannabis market. And then we're offering the experience of our board and our management in biopharma for a cannabis research-focused medical purpose company. So I think there's two items at play here. And so I think 2019 will be a good year for us.
Well, yeah, I'm excited to see what you have in store as well. So for anybody who is looking to find out more about your company, your website, and where you can find you on the stock exchange as well.
Yeah, so you can find us on the website, releviumtechnologies.com. We have social media presence as well, and I'm available anytime as well. If you look on the press releases, you can find me. I'm one of the people who read the investors at the releviumcorp.com. So I'm actively, and I'm always accessible to anyone who wants to reach out to me and learn more about the company.
Well, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come into the studio. For all of our viewers, to find a little bit more about your company, you found out where you can learn more on your website and looking up your stock ticker as well. I appreciate very much coming in.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to having you again in the new year so you can update us a little bit more about what's going on with your company.
Anytime. We'll be happy to come by here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And back again.
And again, and again.
And again, and again, and again, and again.
What did you, so you had a chat with him after?
I had a chat with him after. He was a sharp guy, is a sharp guy. I was looking at his bio afterwards, and he spent a long time as a COO, CFO, and CEO of different companies. As a CPA, CMA, he's got his MBA from Queen's, Graduate Corporate Directors Program at the University of Rotman's Toronto. So that's the Ivy League in Toronto, and a master's certificate in risk management from Schulich. Those are not easy schools. So
you know what's really cool is that their IR department reached out to us and wanted to come on the show, and I thought that was really cool.
And that's always to all the people that are out there too. If you talk to these IR people, if you talk to companies, you're like, you know what, they have a great story, wanted that story to be heard more. Let us know. Shoot us an email.
Yeah. So we've decided that we're going to bring them back on again and ask harder questions.
Yeah.
Calling you?
Whoa! Wait, softballs?
Jab back at them.
Softballs?
Softballs. Yeah.
Softballs. No, but I like that approach. Bring them on, talk to them, and then bring them back and ask them a couple.
But yeah, no, I'd love to too. It's funny, a lot of these companies, the next interview we're going to afterwards is with Daniel from Canopy Rivers, and we had a really good talk. We stayed for like 15 minutes afterwards to talk, and it was interesting because he made a really good point. So many people are so worried about right now, and legalization just happened. You really do need 1, 2, even 3 quarters to start putting trends together. What are people buying? What's it looking like? A lot of these companies are at the precipice of actually being the company that they were building towards. So we're judging them now.
Well, you also need the dispensaries to open up, say, in Ontario.
Yeah,
they can't compete with the black market. Right?
Yeah, so a lot of people are at this. Some people were asking earlier, everything's just free falling. But I think people are realizing this is a little bit longer of a game. But for all of those new investors, again, this is not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold. But you look at some of these prices, you look at the valuations, they've come a lot more back to earth, yet these companies have gone so much farther since, say, the three of us started investing
Did you
years
just say
ago.
sensei? You said sensei.
No.
Yeah, you did.
I feel
No,
like you
1000%
did.
not. I did say precipitous, though.
You did.
Yeah,
but you
precipitous.
said sensei. No. Sensei.
We're not having Sean on for a couple of weeks. Yeah, no, good times. But no,
We like to
it
have
was
fun
interesting. Yeah, we like to have fun here.
Oh, yeah.
Going to some of these, some of the comments in here. Let's go back to them here and see what people are saying. They're saying, do we have any recent news on GLH and William Simpson regarding TRTC, TerraTech? No, since they announced that, I haven't heard much since that process. I mean, we followed Goldie Holdings. We were in them like 2.5 years ago.
Oh God.
And
Forever.
forever. And William Simpson took it over from Don, who used to be the CEO of Cara Foods. William Simpson was the CEO of Chalice Farms, and they were really well run. So he was turning that ship around a little bit in Oregon/Washington. So I don't know much about that merger. I'll be honest. I haven't
Nothing really with the merger, but
heard
the
anything.
last news release Golden Leaf had was about their Tahoe hydroponics deal that they were restructuring, which was on December 3rd.
So nothing. Yeah, so a little
Nothing
bit of
really,
news.
not about them.
Mr. News coming in here.
just
Mr.
on our
News
website.
himself.
Greg kills it. Like if you're in a Facebook group and you're probably getting the news, the daily news, it's probably him.
Can we get my camera for a second? Right there. It's that guy. Every morning he's up at 5 in the morning and making sure the news gets out into the 10 or 15 different Facebook groups that we run. He does one thing, goes in this group and this group, and Follow the Money Europe, Follow the Money USA, and the Tabernacle, and Cannabis Investing, and
things. Get on, man. What's happening?
So if you need to know about what's happening between news releases, call him up. His number is 6. No.
Wow, yeah.
Let's not forget about Todd.
Yeah. It's only because he's here. Todd, absolutely. Todd's actually, a lot of the guests that we see on here, when we're talking about people reaching out to us and saying, we really want your company to come on this show and get a chance to talk to everybody, a lot of those go through Todd. And that's what Todd has been absolutely phenomenal. So thank you, Todd, as well. Can't leave you out. Thank you for reminding me.
We need to get a face of Todd on a popsicle stick.
Yeah, I just put it in the background.
With George.
Well, we crammed a lot into this show today, so we have to actually go right into our interview with Daniel from Canopy Rivers. And it was really interesting talking to him because he was speaking about what his company does different from, say, an ETF like HMMJ, where when you're in these ETFs, you're actually buying an allocation. They're only allowed maybe like 10% of one. They have to rebalance it, sell the losers, buy a little more of the winners, whatever it is. But with Canopy Rivers, they approach it as they do seed investments in companies. So you're still getting that chunk of many different companies, but they're also taking the know-how from themselves and also Canopy Growth Corporation and pouring it into them.
I met Daniel at a CHV meeting. I was at Canada House in Pickering, and Daniel was there. He worked for Capital.
Nice.
Actually, I don't know.
Well, let's see what he's up to now.
He was there, and I knew who he was, and he probably didn't know who I was.
Well, we were again loving these talks afterwards. He went off about the different markets, what he's doing there. Very, very passionate. Let's turn to him now and see what he had to say about Canopy Rivers and the future of cannabis. And we're joined here today with Daniel Perlstein, Executive Vice President of Strategy of Canopy Rivers. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me, Brandon.
Absolutely. And I can imagine you've been busy lately. A lot of things have been developing in the United States. Just in general, the space has been, there's no lack of stories, let's call it that way. But what are you excited about right now, and what have you been up to over the last little while?
Sure. Okay, good start. Yeah, obviously a lot of stuff happening in the space. Let's start with legalization. That's Canada being the first G20 nation to legalize adult use cannabis. And I think a lot of different operators are now figuring out, okay, how am I laying the foundation for the next 3 to 5 years? This is legalization, and some of the people in the government have said this. Legalization is not an event; it's a process. And what Canopy Rivers is doing is building that long-term foundation. We're building that process. Canopy Rivers is the venture capital affiliate of Canopy Growth.
Yeah.
Similar to how Google has Google Ventures to make investments. So whereas Canopy Growth likes acquisitions,
Yep.
Canopy Rivers minority stake investments that take a variety of structures into a variety of different operators. We have a portfolio of 11 investments, and now we're focusing on ancillary and emerging markets.
Gotcha.
So over, let's say the last couple months were probably highlighted by Rivers being a separate company from Growth. Our go public on the TSXV under the symbol RIV, R-I-V. So that happened around a month before legalization. So the summer was obviously very busy, kind of getting the company public, providing a lot of investor education in how we appeal to investors, providing really a long-term play and access and exposure to these ancillary and emerging markets, generally private companies that aren't yet available on public exchanges. So Rivers provides a unique investment vehicle for investors to get exposure to not only cannabis 2.0, but cannabis 3.0.
Yeah.
So over the last little while, particularly in my role, has been helping work with the portfolio and provide some market intelligence and work with the operators, understanding new regulatory regimes, stuff in Ontario that's changed recently. Yeah. But also looking at emerging markets around the world where you have the United Kingdom and Mexico as a few other countries that have really come on, and it's saying, okay, how do we, as Rivers, take what we've done in Canada and repeat that in markets around the world?
Yeah. And is there one place in particular that that really catches your eye? I mean, I can imagine the United States, and one of the questions actually one of our investors was asking us was, do you have plans of really hitting the edible side of things,
Sure.
especially in the United States, because it's huge over there, drinks
Right.
and food. Is that something that's catching your eye, or is there something else that's like, you know what, I like that, I'd rather be here instead?
Yeah, sure. Two-part question there. So stuff on the U.S., I'll talk specifically with Canopy Rivers and as well as Canopy Growth, but Rivers cannot touch anything that's plant touching in the U.S. because it's a federally illegal market. Which is why we're approaching things from the ancillary, non-plant touching, service providers, technology, equipment, fertilizers, and so on that are supporting those operators. So specific to edibles, which is kind of the second part of your question, that's again part of that legalization 2.0.
Yeah.
Regulations of which in Canada we're expected to receive public disclosure, at least a sneak peek, probably within the next few weeks.
Oh, very nice, actually.
That'll be a sneak peek for regulations that might try and come in, call it around a year after legalization started. And then the commercial operations of which might take a little bit of time to put in as well. But edibles, edibles are, the work around edibles is gonna have to start right now, and that's stuff that we're kind of looking into. But it's a separate matter from the United States. Rivers can provide almost indirect exposure to the US because we can't be directly there.
Correct, yeah.
One way that we've done this actually in a few different ways. So the first one would be our investment in TerraSend. So they're a publicly listed licensed producer, and we had exposure there in the form of equity and warrants. We exchanged our position for what is an exchangeable share shortly and in concurrent with the company announcing that they were going to pursue a US strategy, which they can do because they're listed on the CSE.
Gotcha.
So we have a passive exchangeable share that could convert back into our common share when and if all the approvals and everything is permissible at one day. But there is some exposure, as TerraSend has publicly announced, not exact the details, but have recently brought on a president from, I believe, AbbVie, which is a large pharmaceutical company, in order to lead that pursuit. Secondly would be an investment in Farmhouse. It's actually a joint venture. It's 49-51 between Canopy Rivers 49 and the principals and operators of North America's largest greenhouse company. They I think last year did something like over $1.5 billion top line in sales of veggie and produce and products, and we're partnered with the principals and operators of that business. Why that's really important is we have a global non-compete with them, which now recently after Rivers providing funding to that joint venture, includes a non-compete for the United States. As well as also press released a couple weeks ago again that include, these principals have relationship networks in the United States, Mexico, Peru, Guatemala, places in Europe, and they are our partner. So instead of looking for greenhouses and scoping the world of hey, where are we going to build something, we have the principals of North America's leading greenhouse operator to help us pursue our international strategy.
Very unique.
Thirdly, would be Rivers has an investment in AgriFarm. This is a joint venture between Canopy Growth, Organobrands of the United States, and Greenhouse Seeds of the Netherlands. And essentially, this was trading off equity in return for brand distribution rights. Organobrands is one of the leading brand of edibles and vape pens, so Open Vape and District Edibles. They're sold all over the United States, and we actually have some warrants in that business where Canopy Growth gets the distribution rights to those best-selling products and genetics from Europe that have years of brand loyalty, consumer trust, and evidence and product positioning that will be ready for what that legalization 2.0 is. Because through AgriFarm and the Organobrands relationship, we'll be able to bring products that people already know.
It's very interesting, yeah. So you're getting exposure to the United States, but at an arm's length. You're not actually investing in them, but you have the ability to through these different engines that you've been creating, or vehicles, I should say.
Yeah, so we're running what we say is kind of a broad, we call it a unique investment vehicle that is pursuing strategic capital and operational support throughout the global cannabis value chain. And I think in part of what really gives investors the peace of mind, investors of all kinds, shapes, sizes, retail, institutional, and everything in between, is that we're pursuing things in a regulatory and in exchange compliant manner because of our TSXV listing and because Canopy Growth also on the TSX and the New York Stock Exchange. So this is a regulatory and exchange compliant way to get unique exposure to verticals that investors simply don't have exposure to in the public markets right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anybody who's watching, I can imagine most people already know this. If you're on the TSX Venture, the TSX, especially if you're on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ, you cannot specifically have touching the plant of any kind in the United States. And this is a really unique way of not getting around that, but working within the lines of still being able to get a foot in there, but not obviously crossing the line.
Right, and what I think what's really interesting, the US seems to be, in some cases, a crystal ball for how Canada might roll out. So Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, Colorado, and a few others, I think Maine, Massachusetts, and other states like that. Many more that are actually medical. I think it's over half of the US states right now have medical regulations and laws at a state level. Mm-hmm. But because they've been operating legally, adult use or medical and combined, let's say, a number of those, I think there's 9 states now plus DC for, let's say, anywhere from 1 to 5 years or so, it really provides a crystal ball for what kinds of products consumers might want here in Canada, for what kinds of products people are going to be going to, for what kinds of brands people are loyal to. And I think a lot of people sometimes forget about Canada and the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And on the back of our strategic investment from Canopy Growth and them being a strategic partner of ours and us working close with them, ultimately we're looking to provide return on capital for investors in federally legal compliant jurisdictions. And the US is obviously a very big market, but Europe and South America and Asia and Australia and New Zealand, those markets are bringing in medical cannabis regulations or are in process of doing so. So there's an ability to bring brands that people already trust in established markets, have them tested in Canada in a federally compliant manner, and then brought around the world. And that's part of what we're doing, is Rivers is targeting entrepreneurs that are best in class in each vertical of the value chain, that bring track records of success from other industries that are applying that to cannabis. So we want to go after and invest and partner with companies that are the best at what they do, but doing that one thing really, really well. So that we can have a cultivator provide product to an extractor, that provides product to a formulator, that sends product to the vape pen, the edibles factory, the beverage bottling factory, that's sold through a retail chain, that's covered by a media outlet that brings the consumer back to the brand, that's tracked seed to sale. And we want to set up this global supply chain where we can provide capital to up-and-coming entrepreneurs that want to maintain control of their business, but be able to receive that strategic and operational support that the investment professionals at Rivers can provide, as well as being able to tap into key experts and subject matter experts throughout Canopy growth as well.
Yeah, and I like that, because when you're going into, a lot of people go into an ETF because they don't know what to buy, and they don't want to constantly look at something. But when you go into an ETF, they just own that company, or they own shares of that company.
Right.
From what you just explained, what we talked about earlier as well, is that you do have an investment in these companies, whether through these unique vehicles or direct investments into the actual company, into a private placement, whatever it be.
Right.
But also, you're now providing the expertise that you have, Canopy Growth, just all these other elements of increasing the value of these investments. So it's not just you're buying into one of these companies, you're also buying into someone who is actively trying to bring them together, to make them stronger, make them better, and grow it. So
totally.
You're investing in the company, and you're also investing in a team who's helping each and individual company. I think that's a rather unique process, especially when it comes to the cannabis space. Not many are doing that.
Totally. The story behind Rivers is the company was formally started about a little over a year and a half ago, actually almost 2 years at this point, in April of 2017. But the story actually starts a year and a half before that.
Gotcha.
So Bruce Linton and the principals of XIB Financial had been looking to acquire assets across the country when it was just Tweed and Bedrocan and Tweed Farms. It was, how do we be local everywhere? They were running into a lot of entrepreneurs through this M&A process, so which took a year and a half, call it starting back in 15 even. They were running into entrepreneurs that weren't quite ready to sell. But it was neither capital efficient, nor did they have a vehicle to put these minority stakes. So that created Rivers. Gotcha. So Canopy Rivers was started, call it almost 2 years ago, but there was already a year and a half or 2 years of work done before that, evaluating up-and-coming entrepreneurs. So their portfolio right now has been largely Canada-centric, but we've been diversifying through the ecosystem, through a media platform, a retailer. We have an investment in a hemp cultivator in Italy. So we're starting to get to different parts of the value chain in different parts of the world. And I think over time, you'll start to see that we're not taking a passive approach. This is something where we can provide a lot of value, and that's something that entrepreneurs actually look for. You can find capital, but it's how do you find capital plus strategic and operational support? And that's something that we're trying to bring.
Well, absolutely. Well, hey, I appreciate very much your time coming down the show, telling us a little bit more about not just who you are, but what you're doing as well. For anybody who's interested more, RIV is the ticker. You can find the TSX Venture. And do you have a website that they can go to for more information, investor deck or something?
Yes, it's canopyrivers.com, and we have an investor section there too. You can find our presentation online as well.
Perfect. Well, hey, thank you very much for coming down.
Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure having you on the show. I know you were on here with James earlier. Love hearing the updates. We look forward to having you back on the show soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
And we're back.
He stole my line. I'm just reading a comment from Paul. Paul goes, very clever, or clever USA strategy. This is called vertical integration. And I thought it was very clever, actually, because it's all within the law. And yet they're still being able to groom these companies, help them with information when those laws change, which we all know they're going to. They can then exercise their vehicles, go back into options and warrants and shares, and have ownership of these companies. I think that's a very, very smart
I like
way of getting
Canopy
into it.
Rivers. Some of the brightest people behind that company.
Yeah. So we already spoke. He'd love to come back on. We would love to do a longer segment because I'm very curious about all the knowledge he's got from USA, different areas throughout Europe. I love soaking that up. So
talk to
we'll
him.
have you on again. Oh, there's the camera in the next little while.
Johnny Mac.
Johnny
Mac on?
Mac.
Can you hear
Hi
me?
guys,
Oh, there
Hey,
you go.
John.
you hear me okay?
Yep.
Do you hear any feedback?
Not right now. Hopefully it stays that way. I see it's my lucky day because Brandon's wearing a seagull shirt.
I knew you'd like this.
You've upset Carl.
Carl doesn't realize how nice the seagull. Look at them in the camera.
I-
Oh, it was better before. Can you see that? Is that a little? Yeah. But to the TA.
Awkward. What do we got up first, Johnny? Got a little GGI?
I think TGIF was I have Garibaldi trading up right now. Quite the move today, but yeah, let's start off with TGIF because I think that was the first pick. By the way, I do have a bit of feedback right now. I can hear myself.
Okay.
It's actually pretty. It's actually
All right.
pretty bad feedback too. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so just I think we did an analysis on this one 2 shows ago. So just as a reminder to everyone, basically long-term picture. This is a stock that's generally been in a downtrend for most of the year. And now we're moving sideways again. Long-term view, sort of a sideways movement, tightening range.
Hey, guys.
Kind of what I would call a bearish bias to the trading. So sideways movement with a bit of a bearish bias. So we hit the low of the correction here, rebounded, obviously a lower high from where things got, and then we're into a tightening range here now, and you can see that today. This is a weekly chart, of course, so this candle here encapsulates the last 3 days of trading, but we're back to testing that low that we set the week of October 29th, and if you recall, that was the week that the S&P 500 had its really. I mean, it's been rough since the beginning of October, but things got really rough that week of October 29th. So we're right back down, testing that low again. And just looking back, we are, that puts us back in this support area. So we got a nice bounce here in August from this area, bounced up. We got another bounce off that in October, bounced up, and we find ourselves back here again. And again, for those people at home, where the support area is coming from, we're looking back. Previous resistance becomes support. So we got through it, tested, held, back up. We've tested here, held, back up, tested here, held, back up. So we know we have buyers here in these say mid 30s. I have it drawn roughly 37 to 33, so a 4-cent range. So we know we have buyers here. So you definitely, if you're long on TGIF, you want to see the support area hold. From a longer term standpoint, if we were to, for whatever reason, lose the support area, and the markets are kind of ugly right now in general, not to mention the sort of the general sentiment towards MJ since the F-FRIA quote unquote scandal came out. Things have not been kind to a lot of companies. So not necessarily anything to do specifically with TGIF as a company, but everybody is getting hit hard for the most part. So if we do lose this support area, really what you're looking for sort of on the weekly chart, almost down into the low 20s here before you could say, you're going to find an area with strong support. So hopefully this area holds. It has in the past. It's been tested a number of times and held up. So obviously it would be good if the stock could hold that support zone and, maybe worst case scenario, just trade sideways for a bit more until it can weather the storm of this negative MJ sentiment. Zooming in a bit on the daily chart, you can see that when we rebounded here, we haven't been able to follow through on the rebound. The rebound, okay, we made a nice push up, but then it's just a bunch of lows here. Can never seem to find a higher low. So we're back to testing this same low here again. So looking again for that low to hold, ideally rebound off this, probably trade within this zone. I would expect for a while, maybe tighten up and either trade sideways or eventually break this resistance here around 43 cents. We've had a few tests, 43, 44. Sorry, 45 cents. 45 cents, a few tests here that have been rejected. That would be what I would be looking for. If we fail to hold this again, if you remember back to the weekly chart, we are still in the support area. We'd be looking back to this low right at the bottom of that support area of 33 cents. So this is the support area. This is where we're looking for things to bounce and hopefully hold. I think right now, given the way the market sentiment is, unless there's a big shift in the S&P 500, which I don't think is likely, or there's a big shift in the sentiment towards U.S. MJ plays, I think it would be very hard for this stock to push off here and start trending upwards. I think the best you can do right now, given current conditions, is just probably to trend sideways for a while, hopefully in a narrowing range, and then look for a breakout, ideally to the upside. I think I just wanted to also point out, when we in the spring and summer, when it was correcting, we were getting some support in this, the high 40s, basically 45 to 50. You can see that when we broke that area, the stock came back up. That area gave us trouble as resistance, was able to get above, and once it was above, it was acting as support again. And you can see now we're back to it acting as resistance. We've had several tests in this area. So if I'm going to narrow it down even further, I just think, if we know we have buyers here, we know we have sellers here. For whatever reason, this 45 area, 45 to 50 seems to be a key level. And then this, 37 to 33 seems to be a key level. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the stock just kind of bounces in between here. If you're long the stock, if you like the fundamentals and you're willing to sort of ignore what's going on in the overall markets, this isn't advice to do that. But if that's sort of your mentality and you're looking to potentially add, then, in my view, the best bang for your buck is adding when the stock kind of hits this support area, rather than trying to add if the stock, for whatever reason, were to make a rebound, because that the sellers start to show up there. There is a bunch of convertible debt out on the company. It was issued with a conversion price at 45 cents. I think I mentioned it last time, but one thing I failed to see or notice, I thought it was actually done under a prospectus exemption, but I since checked and saw that it was a prospectus qualified offering of convertible debentures. So that means that those debentures are free trading. So anybody can exercise their debentures, recover their capital. If they can exercise this at 45 cents, they can recover their capital and then sit risk-free on the warrants. So I think intuitively, that might help to explain why this area could be important. Is you have, anytime you get at 45 or higher, whoever's holding that convertible debt is able to convert their debt into shares, sell those shares in the market, recover their initial capital, protect it. This is a risk-off environment right now, I would say. I think it's pretty safe to say. So, the tendency for investors is protect your capital. If you have warrants, you can always sit on them risk-free. The warrants are actually trading as well, because they were all prospectus qualified, so you could actually even trade the warrants and book profits. But ultimately, when you're putting money into these private placements, if you can, and they are offering warrants, especially the one-to-one warrants, if you can get your money back in current market conditions, if it was me, that's what I would be doing. I would be taking my money off the table, and I would sit, risk-free with my warrants. So I would expect selling pressure here. If you look into the financials on TGIF, I believe there was almost around about 40 million shares worth if you take the dollar amount that was raised and then convert it at 45 cents. And I believe in the latest financials, about 6 million of those shares or shares equivalent has been exercised since that offering. So you're still looking at, say 32 to 35 million shares sort of out against you, quote unquote, against you in the market, where people could potentially be looking to sell at break even and just keep the warrants risk free. So again, I don't want this to come across as negative towards a placement or a financing. I mean, companies are in the market to raise money. This is why they list to begin with, to do these raises. But the reason to pay attention to these raises is you have to know the share structure and where people might be tempted to sell. And to me, there would be a lot of people tempted to sell if the price gets to 45 or higher, because of those convertible debt. Until you burn through that debt, until that debt slowly gets converted to equity and burns off, it's going to cause a headwind to the company. The other thing to remember too, you have a bunch of warrants, 17 million sitting at 30 cents. So again, if I'm looking down here to say, well, why do we keep finding support here? Well, we know with all those free trading warrants out there, or exercisable warrants, there's no incentive for someone to exercise a 32-cent warrant at 36. But if the price moves up to these highs, obviously there is. So the selling definitely tends to die down when we're into these low mid 30s. The other thing I wanted to mention too, and I don't hold TGIF. I haven't dug into this, but I did note in their last financials there was a bunch of shares that have been escrowed that are coming basically free. 5 million were released at the end of November. There's another, I would say 3 or 4 million being released in mid-December. This is all from escrow. So I would guess typically escrow shares are put in escrow. They're from deals that were made by the company, usually an acquisition deal, where they don't want the stock all coming out against them at once. So they release the stock. They put it in escrow and release it in tranches. So I don't know what price that stock would have been issued at, or what equivalent price, but that, I think if you're long TGIF, that's a question to ask. That's information to get. You could get that from the company. You could always ask the company, what price are those escrow shares sitting at? Because that stock that could potentially come out against you as well and add some selling pressure depending on who holds it. The tendency in some of these deals is, insiders kind of get in on, if you acquire an asset, a company acquires an asset, they bring on another company, and sometimes people from that company end up joining the board of directors. So in that case, those shares, even if the escrow comes off, they're going to be locked down. But if they're not locked down, if the shares in escrow aren't, then those are shares that could come against you as well. So I would say it's just something to be, not something to be afraid of, but it's just something to be aware of. And I would say it's a good question if you're a holder of TGIF to ask management about.
Awesome knowledge, man. I appreciate that very much. Love seeing it. Who was our next company of choice? Who came in number 2?
It was Garibaldi. Brandon was number 2. So just long term, again, still in a downtrend. I mean, we are making quite an effort here, but to turn things around, the stock. This is quite a move off the bottom. We're looking at a 50% move from Garibaldi. It caught me by surprise. I'm surprised it's gone this hard this far. Pleasantly surprised, don't get me wrong. But I would expect after a move of this magnitude, 50%, that the stock is going to have to consolidate, come back down. So what we're going to be looking for is we want to set a higher low. So the last, the low we got to here, basically around $1.98 was the absolute low. So when it consolidates, we want to see it form a base higher than that somewhere, and then try and pivot off that to push back up, push back above, the high we just set, which is $1.60. So again, this support zone that we identified a while back, again, how we're coming across that, we're looking at where has the stock found support in the past. It's been $1 to $1.06, and this has acted as support again. So we got a bounce. It was a very weak bounce. There was lots of selling on, not a lot of volume. So we're back to support area. It's spent a lot of time just kind of churning down here. Not a whole lot of volume. One good thing though, and I believe it happened last time we were charting this, is there was an institutional seller that showed up on the stock, and in 1 week, I know in one day, they sold 300,000 shares just in 1 day alone. That was that ITG seller, and I remember talking about it, I think last time we were charting Garibaldi. So that's a lot of shares to dump in 1 day. It was obviously a motivated seller. They had dumped other shares the Monday and Tuesday of that week as well. So I think it actually came closer to 400,000. So that was actually a good sign that the shares were absorbed. Basically, support held up. Given the volumes we've seen on Garibaldi, one seller shows up to the table and dumps, and especially in 1 day, almost 300,000 shares. That's a lot of selling pressure to absorb. So I saw that as a very good sign that the stock was able to hold up above that pressure and basically sustain itself. And now we're getting this push off. So let's kind of zoom in to the price action, so it's a little bit easier. So so quite the move. We were able to get above the high we set on our previous push off support. So we got this push, but there's a lot of, look at the the selling pressure, not a lot of volume support, so it was weak. We were expecting resistance here, and we actually got above that yesterday, which was good. And the volume was decent as well, almost 600,000 shares. So again, relatively speaking, absolutely speaking, 600,000 shares is not a lot of volume on Garibaldi. It doesn't represent, if you compare it to how Garibaldi used to trade, it's not all that much. But relatively speaking, on a relative basis, it's definitely an improvement over some of the volume we've been seeing lately. It was almost as high as the day that we got that institutional seller dumping their shares. So the increase in volume as you start to push off a support level is what you want to see. So that's good. You can see that we got above the 20-day moving average. It's right here. I don't know if everyone can see this dashed line on the chart. It's the middle of the Bollinger Band. So we got above that as well. That would have been an expected resistance point because look at here. We tried to break above and we were stuffed. So it got above and it actually came back the next day and tested it and it held, and then we got that follow through buying. So we got above the 20 days. So that was bullish. So that was nice that it held. We're getting more good volume today. I think we're about 550,000 today. So we're on pace to actually exceed our volume from yesterday. I know it doesn't show it on the candles. That's because the ATS volume is added at the end of the day. But if you factor in the ATS volume, we're actually really close to the volume from yesterday, and we will likely exceed it by the end of the day. So we are getting quite the upper wick here, and I'm not surprised by this. I kind of saw this move as a little bit premature. Not necessarily that the stock wasn't due for a bounce, but a bounce of this magnitude. Again, we're talking about a 50% move. We were just at $1, and now all of a sudden we basically hit $1.60 today. So we actually got above this high here, which was at $1.53, $1.51, which is good. So this is where I was expecting resistance, and we actually got through it, but you can see that we haven't been able to hold, that we've retraced a lot of that today. So there are sellers starting to show up, and I think I'm not surprised by that. Let's put it that way. One good thing is we are holding above the 50-day moving average so far, and that's good. When a stock is in a downtrend like this and it tries to make a rebound up and you have the falling 50-day average, you can absolutely expect that to come into play as a resistance. But so far we are holding above that as well. I wanted to make a note on RSI. When we talk about RSI levels and sort of bull and bear territory, ever since the stock has kind of rolled over and been downtrending, you can see that the stock has not been able to get above 60% on the RSI, and that's fairly typical. When the bears are in control of the stock, the RSI range tends to be roughly 60% or lower. So your high end on any bounces tends to be, roughly 60%, and then your low end is going to be somewhere in oversold territory. So notice that we've made several attempts to get above, 60% on the RSI where the stock has tried to rally, and every single time it's been stuffed at the 60 line. You can see we're right there. We're actually above that, and we were actually well above it earlier. But keep in mind, RSI is based on closing prices, so it all depends on where the stock can close. But if we can close above this RSI 60 level, and especially if we can somehow get into overbought territory, that is, I would quantify that as a change of character in the stock with respect to the power relationship between the buyers and the sellers. So right now, the sellers are definitely still in control, because even when the stock tries to rally, we can never really get sustained momentum, and RSI is really just a measure of momentum. But if we were to start breaking above this and start to get RSI readings above 60, that are going to hold, and especially if we were to get into overbought territory, to me that definitely is indicative of a change in the power of the bears to have their claws, so to speak, in the stock. So that's a very positive thing. And you can see as well, I've mentioned it in the past, we were showing bullish momentum divergence in the PPO. We were setting lower lows 3 times in a row. Yet 3 times in a row, we got higher lows on the PPO. So the PPO was kind of predicting that we were going to get eventually a move up. I'm surprised that we got this strong of a move up. But, I'm not going to say I'm not happy. I'm still holding my shares, so it's good to see. So what we're looking for now, expect some consolidation. And, how this is going to play out will depend on how far back, how much does the stock give back when it consolidates. We definitely want to see it hold above this low, and the higher this low can be, the better. So, if we only consolidate maybe 20 cents, then that gives us a better chance of pivoting off that, pushing back through this resistance, getting back and setting even a higher high and getting this trend turned around. So, expect consolidation. It's natural after a big move like this, and how that plays out is it's gonna dictate whether we start changing the trend around, starting to uptrend, or we might end up into a position where, okay, we've set this new higher high, but we come way back, the stock gives way a bunch of the price action back, and then we end up kind of trading sideways in an equilibrium type pattern. We're in a tightening range. We are in a downtrend. It has been in a downtrend. So would it be the worst thing in the world for the stock to trade sideways? I really don't think so, provided that eventually, obviously, I'm biased here, but I would like to see that sideways consolidation break to the upside eventually. The only thing that's going to do that, in my opinion, given current market conditions, is some really good news from the company. Obviously, the news has been delayed. Everybody's been patiently, or probably more like impatiently, waiting on assays. You have to remember, it's not in the company's control. They're depending on a third party. So if you're long the stock, you're here for the fundamentals, and you're going to have to just be patient for those assays to come out and let the company tell their story. I have to wonder, there is an investor meeting tomorrow. I have to wonder if there's some anticipation that the company might put out some news with, something at the investor meeting. Whether that comes true or not, we'll have to see. The AGM itself is in 2 weeks on December 19th, but I believe the investor meeting is tomorrow. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys.
Yeah, no, I believe it is. Now,
one other thing I wanted to mention. Sorry, go ahead, Brandon.
No, I was just saying, you can mention that thing, forgive us, as we are restructuring the time of this show. So forgive us that we won't be able to cover Namaste for tonight, but we'll look at a time to get them in really soon for all those that voted on them. Our apologies there. We had some great guests come on and had a lot of information already said in the show.
Are we out of time, Brandon, or how many more minutes do we have?
Just a few minutes, and forgive us on that one. Like I said, we were changing a few things around over the next couple of weeks. But if you can finish your point with GGI, I appreciate it really much. And I think the AGM is it tomorrow? I am almost positive it is tomorrow. Yes, you're correct there.
The investor meeting is tomorrow. Yeah, AGM in 2 weeks. The one last point I wanted to make on Garibaldi. Twofold. One, I'm still seeing the bid layering. Not seeing it today, but I've seen it all earlier this week and all of last week. Again, to me, that points towards a seller being out there wanting to liquidate and trying to artificially generate what looks like strength. So that has me wary. The other thing that I wanted to mention is there's been talk about Eric Sprott adding to his position. We didn't see the Eric Sprott on the ballot for a special resolution being allowed for him to be allowed to increase his position. Obviously, if he was, that would be very bullish for the stock. But keep in mind, there is an exemption under the takeover bid NI 62104 that I believe is available to him. And I'm not a securities lawyer, but I think starting around mid-January, he can actually start to take little nibbles into the stock. And eventually, after April, May, and June come up, he can start to take up to 5% in the open market if he wants, even without a resolution. But don't quote me, I'm not a securities lawyer, but that's my interpretation of the securities legislation around the takeover bid exemptions. This exemption in particular is called the normal course purchaser exemption. So just wanted to mention that because obviously if Eric Sprott was able to take 5 million shares in the market, that would be very bullish. He's shown no hesitation in buying aggressively, and that would soak up a lot of the tradable float. And we can see, one last comment before we run out of time, that the float is tight because the stock is moving a significant percentage on not a lot of volume. So that's telling you the float is tight.
No, and I appreciate it, Johnny. Every time you come on, we're always learning something more. Always appreciate your time. Sorry for everyone that we couldn't get to Namaste today. It is a live show, and we only have so much time in between. We got a bunch of things that we're fitting in, but we will get there to look at what that was telling us.
You never know. We might go live in our Facebook group at any point, right?
Follow the Money Investor group. It's our private group. Karl goes on lives just very randomly with some TA, with news, with whatever it be. Join the group. You might see Johnny Mock down there later on this week talking about Namaste. So, no, I appreciate very much, Johnny, coming on the show. We're always very appreciative of your time.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, John.
And to all of our viewers, I hope you enjoy. In 21 minutes, we're going to have Ed on here. I just saw him walk by, actually, talking about everything that's going on. I'm sure he's got something to talk about with Free and everything else that's going. We'll see you in 20 minutes on the same network.